Match of the day in 20 minutes here on BBC One after the news with Darren Jordan.
A leading British Muslim visits Baghdad to plead for the release of hostages. Anas al-Takriti appears on Iraqi TV as the kidnappers threaten to murder their captives. Farewell to a legend. The people of Belfast say goodbye to George Best. 2 teenage girls are killed after being hit by a train in Essex. And England collapse as they lose the 3rd test and the series in Pakistan. Good evening. A senior British Muslim has met political parties and groups in Baghdad to try to secure the release of the British peace campaigner Norman Kember and 3 other hostages. Anas al-Takriti has persuaded a number of Sunni organisations to condemn the kidnappings and call for their release. The kidnappers have threatened to kill them unless Iraqi prisoners are freed. Caroline Hawley's report from Baghdad contains some strong images of violence.
Putting the message out, a big part of his mission is talking about what kind of a man Norman Kember is. Anas al-Takriti, who was born here, tells this TV station that Mr. Kember and the other hostages were friends of Iraq, peaceful people against the war. In the next few days, he'll also be meeting groups who might have influence over the kidnappers. The problem, he told us, is no one seems to know anything about the group involved. Anas al-Takriti is under no illusions about how difficult freeing the hostages will be.
I think back to the Kenneth Bigley saga, the Margaret Hassan saga, and I dread what could happen. But I also look back to the 2 French aid workers, the Italian journalists, to the Romanians, and I think, yes, it could happen.
But in the latest video, their abductors threaten to kill them unless all prisoners held in American and Iraqi jails are freed. It's a demand the kidnappers must know will not be met. Here's the area where they were taken from a week ago today. And of course, the kidnapping is part of a much wider security crisis in the country. Hundreds of people have been killed here in the last few weeks in an escalation of attacks. Tonight, Al Jazeera television's showing video from a group called the Islamic Army of Iraq. It's not clear when it was filmed. But bombs like this are killing and maiming more and more US troops. It's Iraqis, though, who are paying by far the highest price. Survivors today of an ambush on an Iraqi army convoy. But civilians are still bearing the brunt of this conflict. And it's their plight that brought Norman Kember to Iraq. Caroline Hawley, BBC News, Baghdad.
Up to 100,000 people thronged the streets of Belfast to watch the funeral procession of George Best. Family and friends of the former footballer were joined by leading sporting figures at a service in Stormont's Great Hall. And from there, Dennis Murray reports.
The final farewell for George Best from the people of his native city, and son Callum clearly appreciating the warmth of that farewell. It was heartfelt from the thousands who were there, a sign of what George Best meant to the people and what simply being there meant to the people. The Stormont estate was as packed as safety conditions would allow, more applause and more tributes thrown. Then, again, as the family had wished, a minute's silence. Former teammates carried the coffin to the steps of Parliament buildings. At the service, there were many tributes to George, the most emotional from Callum, a poem sent to him by a Belfast woman, Julie McLennan.
The golden days, they went so fast. The precious times, why can't they last? So many loved you, did you know? We were not ready to let you go. We won't forget our Belfast boy. You filled our lives with so much joy. Your star will shine now in the sky. Farewell, our friend, but not goodbye.
Dickie Best, a sad father, but a proud grandfather. None of the speakers ignored George's problems, but they all emphasised his virtues.
The one thing that he did have, and I think as a person or whatever, to be successful and to do something good, you've got to be a fighter. And that was what he had. And that was shown in abundance over this last few weeks.
The team George Best was most associated with is called United. This was a city united in paying its respects to the most beautiful player of the beautiful game. Dennis Murray, BBC News, Belfast.
2 teenage girls have died after they were hit by a train at a foot crossing in Essex. The pair were killed at Elsenham station this morning when they were hurrying to catch a train for a day out shopping. Police say they're treating the deaths as a tragic accident. Daniel Bircher reports.
Police and rail engineers have spent the day at the scene of the accident. It appears, though, that there was no failure of equipment or procedures. The 2 teenage girls, for whatever reason, did not take notice of electronic signals warning passengers not to cross the tracks. They'd bought their ticket for a day's shopping in Cambridge. The train they hoped to catch was stationary on the opposite platform. But as they ran across to catch it, they were hit by another high-speed service travelling in the other direction. At the level crossing here, manual barriers are brought across to stop road traffic, but there is a separate pedestrian crossing too, through a single gate. That crossing is fitted with lamps that change to red, along with a klaxon when a train approaches. What's not clear is why the girls, despite those warnings, still started to cross the line. An investigation into the exact circumstances of this accident is underway. Throughout the day, engineers have been testing signals and other safety equipment here at the station, including the pedestrian warning lights. But they're confident that everything was working correctly. A tragic accident, leaving 2 families devastated. One of the girls died just days after her 14th birthday. Daniel Bircher, BBC News, Elsenham.
Protesters have taken to the streets in more than 30 countries, calling for urgent action to combat the threat of global warming. The demonstrations, including one in London, coincide with a United Nations summit on climate change being held in Canada, as John Brain reports.
Marching to save the planet. Organisers of the London demonstration claim this was the biggest protest over climate change ever staged in the UK. Not for the first time, the main target of their anger was the US president, who refused to ratify the Kyoto Treaty aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But this was also designed to put pressure on Tony Blair. Environmental groups fear his government is wavering in its commitment towards the need for legally binding targets.
We're seeing greenhouse gas emissions rise under this government. We're seeing this government now not talking about targets, talking about technology instead. Those are not 2 different options. You need the targets to drive the technology. This government's currently failing us on that.
If we could see the gases, the causes of the problem would be obvious to everyone.
This government video has just been released as part of a new campaign to raise awareness of global warming. Further proof, say ministers, that Britain is taking a leading role.
Just yesterday, the UK presidency has managed to get agreement to include aviation within the EU carbon trading scheme. So there is no country that has done more than the UK in terms of combating climate change.
Well, one thing the government and these protesters are agreed upon is that no single nation can tackle global warming on its own. This is just one of numerous protests being held today around the world.
Including Montreal, for now the focus of the debate on global warming. John Brain, BBC News.
Well, climate change is also a big challenge for much of the developing world. India is now the 5th biggest producer of greenhouse gases, and as its economy grows, it's expected to produce a lot more. The state of Gujarat is rapidly industrializing. From there, Navdeep Dhariwal has sent this report.
The jewel in India's industrial crown. Gujarat is a state hard at work feeding the country's ferocious appetite for growth. It also accounts for carbon emissions that make India one of the world's biggest polluters.
As you can see from the chimney, they are very clean emission, and the cause is because of the natural gas being used as fuel.
Girish Luthra is encouraging Gujarat's businesses to go green. This chemical fertilizer factory now uses natural gas and has also changed the way it gets rid of toxic waste.
By changing the technology, we don't even not only save the atmosphere, we also save cost. That is cost of disposal.
But India's drive to success is intensifying demand for more energy. There are a few companies exploring alternatives, and it's predicted that in the future, the country will only have a limited supply of fossil fuels.
One reason why renewable energy isn't being used on a large scale is that it can be more expensive than sticking to conventional fuels. The Indian government doesn't offer companies many incentives or subsidies, and India internationally has made no binding commitment to reduce emissions.
But the country is being forced to face the impact of climate change. Shanti Lal has just finished clearing up after record rainfalls wrecked the dream retirement home he'd spent a lifetime saving up for.
There were rains all over the place. In America there were floods, in Andhra Pradesh, in Madras. I don't think the authorities can do anything to stop this freak weather.
Gujarat is also struggling with acute water shortages. The poor are bearing the brunt of these changes. Experts warn India's race to development won't lift its people out of poverty unless it faces up to its environmental responsibilities. Navdeep Dhariwal, BBC News, Gujarat.
Finance ministers of the G7 group of big industrial nations met in London today and called for progress in global trade talks later this month. The Chancellor, Gordon Brown, wants the European Union to reform its farm policy, which is one stumbling block to a trade deal. He even invited some non-G7 countries to the meeting to boost the case for change. Here's our economics editor, Evan Davis.
Another day, another international meeting, but the same old argument gets in the way. The French, represented by Thierry Breton, don't want more reform of European farm policy. Gordon Brown for the British does. All week, the argument over agriculture's dominated the row over the EU budget. Today, it dominated discussion on a second front, world trade. Countries like Brazil object to European farm policy. So guess what? Mr. Brown, who was hosting today's summit, invited Brazil along. Shook hands, all to add pressure on the French.
Can I say we've had an excellent meeting of ministers this morning, and we've been discussing the trade talks. We believe there is some urgency in moving forward the trade talks.
Brown's unlikely new buddy, the Brazilian finance minister. In the morning, Brazil even made a small trade concession. But the French, they were not going to let that intimidate them.
Maybe a change, but I can tell you by experience that between a change and a progress, sometimes there is a gap. So we'll see. The negotiator will have to negotiate.
Clearly, there's a lot of talking to be done. Today's meeting was just a warm-up act for the really big show that takes place in Hong Kong in 10 days' time. That's when 149 countries gather for a week of global trade talks. All the signs are, though, a week won't be long enough to bridge the divide over European farm policy. Evan Davis, BBC News, at the G7 Finance Ministers meeting.
Now with news of an England collapse in the cricket and the rest of the day's sport, here's Mary Rhodes. Mary?
Thanks very much indeed, Dan. Good evening. England's cricketers have lost the third and final test against Pakistan and the series 2-0. After being 201 for 2 at lunch, England collapsed to 248 all out, losing by an innings and 100 runs. Joe Wilson reports from Lahore.
The Gaddafi Stadium is not the Oval, nor is it Trafalgar Square, but the sense of achievement here for Pakistan matched anything enjoyed by England in the summer. The strange part is that the morning session was sedate, with Collingwood and Bell batting on untroubled. But lunch was followed by the collapse to end all collapses. Collingwood first to fall to Canaria. Peterson did not hang around long. Flintoff misread the turn out first ball.
Beauty, would you believe it? He's on fire.
When the defiant Ian Bell was undone by the Akhtar slower ball, 4 big wickets had fallen in 15 minutes. From there, the demise was hastened a little by the umpiring, Jones out LBW when the ball clearly hit his bat. But the fighting spirit had disappeared, and with it, so had the series.
That's the end.
Throughout the whole series, I think, if we're totally honest, they've played the better cricket than we have.
You know, you can look back at Multan and say, yeah, we could have won that game, but throughout a 3-match series, Pakistan have put us under more pressure than we have put them under.
Well, England arrived here on the back of the biggest cricketing high for a generation, 1 month on, and the players who look like world beaters are all Pakistan's. Joe Wilson, BBC News, Lahore.
Well, all the goals and highlights from today's Premiership games are coming up on Match of the Day. That's straight after the news. But here are the results. Liverpool have notched up their 6th straight Premiership win, beating Wigan 3-0. Peter Crouch's long wait for his first goal for Liverpool is over. Bolton enjoyed a 2-0 home victory over Arsenal. Stelios Giannakopoulos with the second. And Manchester United finished an emotional week with a 3-0 win over Portsmouth. Paul Scholes scored the opener. Elsewhere, Everton's revival continues with a 2-0 victory over Blackburn. Chelsea picked up another win, beating Middlesbrough 1-0. Newcastle and Aston Villa shared the points. Spurs came from behind to beat Sunderland 3-2. West Brom and Fulham played out a goalless draw. So Chelsea stay top, 10 points clear of Man United. Liverpool have moved up into third and Arsenal have dropped back behind Spurs. Harry Redknapp has left Southampton after just a year in charge of the club, paving the way for a return to his former side and South Coast rivals Portsmouth. Redknapp said it was impossible for him to come back to Southampton after the club refused him permission to talk to Portsmouth about the vacant manager's job there. Well, one of the other names that's been linked with the job at Portsmouth is the Rangers manager Alex McLeish. His side have been struggling in the Scottish Premier League and today they lost a 2-goal lead to draw with Falkirk. Elsewhere, Dundee United beat Hibs 1-0. Dunfermline lost at home to Kilmarnock by the same score. Hearts are top of the table after a 2-1 win over Livingston, and Motherwell lost 2-0 to Inverness Caledonian Thistle. Bath are through to the semi-finals of Rugby Union's Power Gen Cup after they beat Gloucester by 21 points to 12 at the Recreation Ground. And Leicester are also through to the last 4. They came from behind to beat Northampton at Welford Road. 3 second-half tries helped them to a 29-16 victory. Finally, tennis and Croatia are just 1 victory away from winning their first ever Davis Cup title. They beat Slovakia in today's doubles to take a 2-1 lead in Bratislava. And that's all from me for tonight. Darren.
Mary, thank you for that. And you can see more on all of today's stories on BBC News 24, including coverage of how thousands in Belfast paid tribute to the footballer George Best. But for now, from Mary and from me, good night.
Good evening. Well, it's proving to be one of those weekends. If you're lucky, you stay dry. If you're unlucky, you see shower after shower after shower. Tomorrow, probably rather fewer showers, so a better chance of staying dry. Tonight, very mixed indeed. Fair amount of cloud, showers dotted around. Most places escaping a frost, but in 1 or 2 spots where it stays clear, it's going to be touch and go. Chilly start. Where the winds are light, we could see some fog forming. Most likely, western end of the central belt of Scotland. Here, that fog could well linger well on into the day, but fog will not be widespread across the UK. Most places escaping. A lot of dry weather inland, as you can see. Some sunshine, if you're lucky, first thing in the morning. Likely to see a line of heavy showers just clipping into Kent for a time before things improve. And another line of showers just funneling up the Bristol Channel towards the Cardiff area. But having said that, on either side, lots of dry weather. There'll be a fair amount of cloud around in Wales, but hopefully that will lift. Some showers across the Irish Sea. Somewhere across Northern Ireland, we'll like to see a line of showers developing. And later on in the day, that'll be feeding into northwestern parts of England. The showers across the far southeast should fade. We'll keep the showers going, though, across eastern Scotland. But out of those regions, plenty of dry weather and hopefully some sunshine through the afternoon. A lot of sport taking place, of course, and we've got some more FA Cup matches taking place at Worcester, for example. Here at St George's Lane, should stay dry, fair amount of cloud, and you can catch the action live on BBC One. Around about 7 or 8 degrees typically, but only 4 or 5 where it stays foggy. Good night.